Hello again, Chris Lee and Blake Lovell, the Southeastern 16. Big Sunday for the SEC in college basketball. We got Auburn blowing out Richmond. We got Vanderbilt going to Texas and beating TCU. But most of all, we are burying the lead. Missouri has knocked off Kansas by a final score of 76-67. Some of us in the stream may have had doubts, not naming names here, but all kidding aside, big win for the Tigers, who just look terrific. I mean, that's almost the hardest type of game to win. You said in the private chat we're having, hey, look, getting a huge lead in a rivalry game can be kind of a recipe for disaster, paraphrasing. Almost blowing a lead in that spot and hanging on it to win is one of the tougher things you can do. Congratulations to Dennis Gates and the Tigers on biggest home win for Missouri since I don't even know when.
Yeah, no, that was huge. What else do you say? Just beat the number one team in the country, who happens to be your rival on your home court after what we said. I mean, for Missouri, the biggest knock on them to this point was just simply the fact that you didn't have kind of the body of work to judge them on that you had with some of these other SEC teams, that have already beaten, let's say, multiple top 25 teams, top 15 teams, whatever. The only game we kind of had to go on was the Memphis game, which was the season opener, where we said Missouri looked really good for a good portion of that game. And as we've seen, I mean, Memphis is better than people expected, which I still think people are not giving them enough credit to start the season. So I never looked at that as a bad loss. And now, for them to rally to get the win like they did against Cal on Tuesday, remember, that's a game where you're thinking, what happens if we lose this game? What's our outlook look like from there? But then to build a big lead in a game like this, find a way to hang on. You knew Kansas was going to make the run. Let's not kid ourselves. Missouri wasn't going to win this game by 40 or anything, but you knew Kansas would make a run. Missouri made the plays to withstand it, and yeah, there's no sweeter win, I would say. I mean, Missouri fans can weigh in, but I would think there's no sweeter win so far of the Dennis Gates era than that one right there.
For full disclosure, I got to watch about 40 to 50% of it. Had some other stuff going on, including our live stream around the college football playoff. So I'm going to ask you for your biggest observations, takeaways, wherever you want to go with that. Before I do, Blake, I don't know if you bet on Missouri today, but if you did, I hope you did it at BetOnline, which continues to be the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, BetOnline provides you with all the action and the ability to watch the games as they happen. And boy, I hope you're watching this one as it happened if you're an SEC fan. With the largest selection of odds on everything football, the NBA, college basketball, NHL to UFC, head to BetOnline today. Don't forget to use the promo code BELIEVE, that is BLEAV, for your welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, the game starts here. All right, Blake, biggest takeaway or observation you had from Missouri's win over Kansas today?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure that out. I did a live stream at 8 a.m. this morning, did a live stream at 11 a.m. this morning. Now, Chris, on my third live stream since 8 a.m. this morning, after staying up and watching Kentucky until almost 1 in the morning last night or something. So, no, I know what my biggest thoughts were. If you guys watched the live stream Max and I did, which feels like centuries ago, that was actually about 6 hours ago on the channel, we previewed this game. And one of the things that Max brought up, and we went a little bit deeper into kind of the concept and the approach that Missouri would have to take to win this game. You know what we said, Chris, would be the most important part of this? Getting to the free throw line.
Yep.
And we said that was going to be the difference in this game. If Missouri was able to attack, get to the free throw line, you just knew that this was probably not going to be a game where you were going to be able to rely necessarily on a lot of jump shots. You knew Hunter Dickinson was in there waiting for you, but it still had to be a game where you had to be sort of in attack mode. And, little did we know, Missouri was in attack mode also on the defensive side. Remember, if you go back to a couple years ago, okay, throw last year out. We know it didn't go well. It's fine. But if you go back to a couple years ago, one of the things we said was with Missouri, they were so hard to beat because they were aggressive on the offensive end. They could make threes and that kind of thing. But we also said they were very aggressive on defense, and the pressure that they put on you was the tough part. And, this year they've been top 20 so far in turnover rate or turnover percentage, defense and all that. And, I think you could tell just in terms of the pressure in this game. Kansas turns the ball over 22 times in this one. Again, we don't get things right all the time here, certainly. But I think the two things we pointed out, forcing turnovers, getting to the free throw line, Missouri, A+ in both categories. And I think that was absolutely the difference in the game. The other difference is pointed out in the chat, Tamar Bates. I mean, we came into the season and, I think we looked at it. And one of the things we said was this guy last year pretty much at times had to simply try his best to put things on his back. And we said they were probably missing a player or two away from being a team that went, what they went, to being a team that maybe finished in the middle part of the SEC somewhere, because that was that difference. But he was always right there, we know, making big plays. And then you wanted to see, okay, as you get into a new season, you get into a situation where this team just is more talented. They've got more options to work with. Who is still going to be the guy, right? And in a game like this, your biggest game of the season at this point, he steps up and he's the guy. And I think that's exactly what you want to see. Now that you've kind of defined that, I think your expectations for Missouri, moving forward, they change. And that's the problem, too. It's like they change, but where on earth do you put them in the SEC pecking order right now, right? Because all these teams, I mean, who has a win over the number one team in the country this year, Chris?
Couple of guys.
It's Missouri. Missouri has a win over the number one team in the country. So it's like, well, what do we do now? I mean, it's a good problem to have. It's, again, the best win of the Dennis Gates era so far. Shout out, Chris, to my guy, Dennis Gates.
Dennis Gates.
The victory in Columbia, Missouri.
I went blank. I guess, has Kansas been number one from the jump?
I don't remember.
Did Auburn overtake them at any point?
No, Auburn got to 2 and only missed out by like 9 first-place votes. But no, I think you're right. So, yeah, that was kind of my point, was Missouri has the win over the number one team in the country this season. And so it's like, I mean, that counts for something. People can knock on their non-conference schedule all they want, playing Mississippi Valley State and Pine Bluff and all that, but they just beat the number one team in the country. So let's not sit here and act like that's not a big deal. Anyone out there who thinks it's not, it is. So.
Well, sorry to be repetitive, but if you haven't heard, the thing I've said about them, and I was saying this before the season, look at their guards. Look at the experience they've got there. Bates is a guy who's shown the ability to take over games. That got lost last year because Missouri was so bad, but he did have some 35-point type games. You mentioned Mitchell coming from Duke. That was a huge piece at a place of need. I thought the Perkins ad was big, but here's what I didn't expect. And look, I know basketball, but you and Max are really dialed in on basketball, and I won't catch up to you guys probably till all of football is done because I've got to spend a lot of bandwidth there. But Anthony Robinson Jr., did you know he was going to be this big of a player for them?
Well,
I mean, he's with all those guards, he's their starting point. You talk about the steals; he had 5 of them today. I think last game earlier this week, I'm doing this from memory, didn't he go for like 27 in a win? I mean,
at 29 in 28 minutes.
Been a huge part of things. And I don't think I thought much about him coming in.
No, I mean, he played well from the start. He played well in that Memphis game, and then, like you said, he had his, the game of the year in the one against Cal, kind of fueled the comeback there on Tuesday, Tuesday I think it was. But I mean, sure, and that was the thing. Like, when we kept talking about the depth coming into the season, one of the things I think we mentioned, we could identify our guys, right? Like, we could identify, okay, we think this guy's going to play this amount of minutes, or we think this guy's going to play a big role, but we couldn't really, always pinpoint who exactly were going to be the guys that are on the floor at the end of the game. You could say, well, these guys are probably going to start, but who are going to be the 5 guys on the floor at the end of the game? In a lot of these. And I think that was, again, purposeful because we just mentioned that's the depth I think this team has to work with. And we've talked to, and I've pointed out, some criticism of just that there are a lot of guys that have been playing in some of these games, right? The rotations have kind of been, we're throwing anybody and everybody out there to try to find the right mix during these pre-conference games. Coaches always like to do that. But, again, there has been some criticism at times of different rotations. Or is it working as well as some of the others? But I think in games like this, again, you sort of see who your standout guys are. And with Robinson, he has been a big piece of the puzzle. Even like Mark Mitchell, we knew there were high expectations for him coming in. He was probably going to be the guy that was the most talked about, not named Tamar Bates just because of him being on the team last season. But, Mark Mitchell has had some big games, and this was another one where it's like, hey, you want to see your big players step up in big games, and if they're going to be a team that can beat the number one team in the country, finish in the top half of the SEC, which, by the way, if you finish in the top half of the SEC this year, you're probably a top 20 team, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So if you do that, these are the guys that you're going to have, and you've kind of seen that. And I'll even point out one other thing, right, where, Josh Gray is also one of those guys that I think in a game like this, we knew coming in, his role was not going to be a guy that was going to come out and score 15 points a game. That didn't have to be his role. We knew that. But in games like this one in particular, you can look at his stats this year, kind of all over the board, right? But in a game like this, I think he was very important because of the physicality that he brings and just, again, the rebounding ability, which is what this team needs. His ability just to rebound the ball, to be able to be a presence in the paint on both ends of the floor. Also, I think, throw out just the scoring numbers. We like to look at those first, but this was kind of that total team effort. You had a lot of guys step up, make big plays. Unreal for these guys.
Yeah, Gray was the guy I was going to bring up next. That was a really nice portal ad at a position of need. And I know they got out-rebounded, 40-29 today, which happens when Hunter Dickinson's on the other side. But I felt like one thing that I would watch is they would scatter Kansas a little bit. They'd have to shoot some long threes. And sometimes what you're worried about in a situation where you get a stop is that rebound. I thought he did a really good job of grabbing a lot of big boards late for them when Kansas was making a run, getting within the 5 or 3 or whatever it got to. Felt like Gray was the guy that was snagging that rebound and getting Missouri possession at a time that it really needed. And that 2 that he hit, too, that was about that close from being a 3, that was kind of a big shot, too, at a time where it felt like they were starting to maybe get a little bit tight and the magnitude of the game was starting to sink in a little bit.
How about Josh Gray stepping out and knocking down jumpers? Like, this guy's like, you know what? I'm not just a rebounding guy. Let me just make a long jump shot, too. Let me add that to the mix. But, even go back to last year at South Carolina, we talked about him. The numbers weren't going to completely jump out at you, but he's a guy you had to have on the team. And he's a guy that was going to play valuable minutes. And I think, again, you're kind of seeing how they've been using him so far. He started every game this season. And it's just because he does bring some of those intangibles that aren't always going to show up necessarily just in the stats, but the rebounding is, and again, some of the things he can do, I think, is pretty remarkable. So just with this rotation. So, and Stuart brings up a good point here. I want to bring people, because again, we talked about this, but yes, remember that too. Like, he's coming from Leonard Hamilton, Dennis Gates is, and like, this is not a new thing. You can go back to Cleveland State. You can go back to, again, just kind of what he's done as a coach. Like, this is just how it works. And we've always said that about coaches in this part of the year. And I think especially now, Chris, it's even more of a bigger deal because it's the transfer era. You have so many new parts every single season that you're going to have, coaches that are going to be experimenting up until conference play. It's always been the case, but like more so now because you just have so many new pieces. And I think that, again, it's nothing outside the norm for Dennis Gates, or I think for a lot of coaches around the country, just because you have a lot of new pieces to the puzzle. And in these kind of games, this is where, you start to see who the guys are that are really going to be, a main factor heading into, once we get into conference play. So
they only shot 14 threes today. They shot 9 against Cal. Yeah, I was going to say, and Kansas is not a particularly elite three-point defense. That's kind of an interesting way to win when, again, Hunter Dickinson's lurking in the paint for the other guy.
Well, but think about it, too. Who's the best three-point shooter probably on this team? He wasn't on the floor.
Yeah.
Right? Like, so I think if you take out Caleb Grill's contributions from the perimeter, that made it even more important, in my opinion, to not have a team that just sat out there and settled for threes in a game like this. It was getting to the free throw line, being the aggressor, and that's what Missouri did. That was the game plan. And, I don't think they could have executed it much better in terms of how they did this. And again, to force the amount of turnovers they did. Like, that is just, if Missouri can do this throughout the season, they are going to be a team that, finishes in the top half and has a chance to, be a top tier seed in the NCAA tournament. Long way to go, but these are the kind of game plans that Dennis Gates had here, I think, in this team to show that you have a star that can put you on your back. You've got other guys who are playing significant roles, and, now you look the rest of the way, right? They got LIU coming up next Saturday, Jacksonville State, and then they got Illinois in a big game on December 22nd before they start SEC play. And we keep saying, first SEC game, they're at Auburn. So, what a win for the Tigers. They're tired of hearing about this non-conference schedule. They said, give us the Jayhawks. Give us the number one team in the country. We'll take them down. Then you can talk about our non-conference schedule.
I know this is a footnote, and you guys have talked about it, but Boateng didn't play today, which I guess isn't a complete shock with his diminishing minutes. But that's kind of interesting with Grill not playing too.
Well, I mean, I still think at times
I know they're different things, but you know what I mean. It's another body.
I think it's just hold on before we get to that's great. And, I don't know. This may not even be a serious comment. Like Luca also, by the way, left a let me find it. He left a $5 super chat. Oh my God, $5 super chat. I know this is Hoop Talk today, but I want to use this super chat to celebrate Alabama missing the playoff. Ding dong, the Wicked Witch is dead. WD. So shout out there. We did do a football stream, Chris and I, a couple hours ago. But I think something he brought up here, and this is I kind of laugh at this, but it's Missouri is decent. They might finish in the top 13 in the league, right? You could be the number 12 team in the SEC right now and be a top 9 seed in the tournament, perhaps. So it's just absurd where this league is at. We've never seen this in the SEC. You guys know I've been hyping up SEC basketball for years. I've never seen anything like this in terms of this kind of start for a conference to this level. It is absurd at times when you think about it. So
I'm going to check Ken Palm. Ken Palm has not updated Missouri after this win. I'm guessing yes, it did. Okay. 49, is that it? Is that all the bump they got for beating Kansas? I guess we're 59 coming in.
They were 59 coming in, so I'm not shocked by that. So
you've now got every team in the top 60 except for South Carolina, which is 68.
Yeah, it's just nuts.
Every team but Vanderbilt and Carolina in the top 50. And Vanderbilt obviously is 60.
Yep. So, and that's the thing. Stuart brings it up here again. Yeah, hey, no worry, Luca. You can go back and watch the stream. Chris and I did it for about an hour on the reaction show. Go check it out after this. Stuart brings up, and once you get Grill back, think about it. If you play this kind of style and you get to the free throw line, you attack, and then you got Caleb Grill out there opening up things on the perimeter. We've already seen that in some of these non-conference games, but especially against opponents like this, that's going to be big time, I think, for the Tigers of Mizzou.
Good grief, he's shooting 55% from three this year.
Oh yeah, he's been on a roll. So, but I don't think, and you guys can correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, but I thought I saw earlier, still no timeline for Grill's return. So we'll find out, but. Hey, Tyler asks here, where's Missouri ranked on Monday? That's a great question, guys. I was going to ask you this, Chris. Now, hold on. I was going to pull this up because I think this is an interesting discussion for all of us. So, in the AP poll this past week, now remember, a lot's happened, challenge, all this other stuff. Auburn dropped a game to Duke. Kentucky dropped a game to Clemson, but remember, Kentucky beat Gonzaga, so I think the Gonzaga win is more important than the Clemson loss. In my opinion, I think that overshadows it a little bit. Kansas is going to lose, so Auburn's going to be the number one team in the country. Tennessee may be the number one team. Sorry, my apologies. Tennessee's going to be the number one team in the country. I think Auburn's going to be the number 2 team in the country, even though they lost to Duke. I don't know how you really move Auburn, I guess, unless Marquette jumps, because Marquette may jump them, but we'll find out. Tennessee's going to be the number one team in the country. Again, Auburn, Kentucky, I don't think should move much. They were number 4. And then the other SEC teams, Alabama shellacked North Carolina. They're going to stay in the top 10 somewhere. Florida's not moving anywhere out of the top 15.
Florida
Oklahoma
may move into the top 10.
It's possible. Oklahoma 21, Texas A&M 22, Ole Miss 23. So how many teams was that? Let's see. Sorry, I'm doing the math on the fly.
I'll start from the bottom. 1, 2, 3,
8 or 9. It's either 8 or 9.
I've got 7, but
okay. So
Auburn, Tennessee, Kentucky. That's 3. Alabama 4. Florida 5. Oklahoma 6. A&M 7. Ole Miss 8. I forget Oklahoma's in the SEC.
Yeah.
There you go.
So there's that. Now, on the receiving votes, you had Arkansas at 104, which I don't think they're getting that many receiving votes this week. You had Mississippi State at 20. They should be in the top 25 after the beatdown they gave to Pittsburgh. So I think they're going to be in. Georgia had 10 receiving votes. Missouri is going to get a lot of votes, I think, coming out of this. I wouldn't be surprised if Vanderbilt gets some votes. You see my point here? Like,
yes.
Literally everyone, except for maybe LSU. Maybe LSU doesn't get votes this week. South Carolina's not going to get votes. We know that. But LSU might be the only other team in the SEC that does not get votes this week. I think Vanderbilt gets a vote somewhere. I think Missouri's votes are going up big time. Mississippi State will be ranked now. I mean, my goodness, folks.
Well, you know how, like, most years you're looking through schedules and going, Kentucky's got blah, 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 and they got Georgia and South Carolina, and they've got so-and-so, but it's at home, and you're just, like, already marking off a team as 5-0 and 6-0 out of the jump. And, like, there's no pass-outs on any games this year in this league.
Mm-hmm.
Like, South Carolina going to Auburn or Tennessee, for example, that's going to have a double-digit spread, and probably Vanderbilt's in that boat too. But other than that, man, it's like – I'd say it's like the NBA, but it's not even like that. Like in the NBA, you got teams that are tanking in a cycle for a while. Like I've never seen the league like this.
No, it's as strong as it's ever been. And by the way, Texas A&M's jumped out on the Texas Tech folks. So that'd be another one where you just look up and say, of course they have. Anyways, is there anyone that was storming the court? Have you made your way to the chat yet? May not be great cell service in there.
By the way, shout out to Dennis Gates. Did you see what he did at the end of the game?
The very end, or calling a timeout?
He called a timeout with 6 seconds left to try to get, knowing that the court storm was coming, to try to let Kansas get out of there.
Yeah.
Safely.
Dennis is a top-tier,
of course he did.
Elite man. He is an elite individual. Anyone who forgot about that. But it's okay. Yeah. It's all right. You can come on back in the mix now if you'd like. But yeah, I mean, I think we're sitting here looking at this opportunity ahead, and I mean, yeah, what a win. And I think, again, they should be getting votes to be ranked on Monday. Where are they going to rank in our power rankings? That's the real question. As Auburn fan said earlier, good luck on the power rankings tomorrow, because it's going to be impossible. I agree with that. By the way, shout out to Joiner's Corner here. Became a new member on the channel. He's going to get to join in on some watch-alongs and some members-only content we got coming this week. If you want to do the same, all 800-plus of you watching right now, you can join in. The It Just Means More tier. Hit that $ button. If you're on a mobile, it'll get you to the join button. If you're on a desktop computer, something like that, you can hit the join button right underneath the title of the video. $3.99 a month. That lets you join for extra content, basketball, football, baseball, SEC-wise. We're going to do some watch-alongs. We're going to have some Q&As. Might even have some special guests jumping in for members only on there. So join it. You won't regret it. Or maybe you will. I can't guarantee that. So.
Any more on Missouri, or do you want to talk Auburn, Vandy, somebody else for a minute?
I mean, we'll let the chat decide. What do you want to talk about, folks?
I think the chat might vote overwhelmingly for Missouri. So
yeah, we'll do a quick hitter on the other games, because these are, I don't think these were most notable. Let's talk about Auburn real quick. They did get a 98-54 win over Richmond. Same old story. I mean, we said, Max and I previewed this game. We said this is not your Richmond of old, perhaps. Chris Mooney's had some really good teams there. I think this one just is not to that level right now. And so Auburn pretty much, I mean, they just dominated this game, exactly what you'd expect. They had 13 threes. I think that's always notable. Got to the free throw line, a rebounding advantage, which is going to be the case for Auburn in a lot of games they play this season. What is it? I think you had let's see. So you had, Broome had 11, 6, and 5, and 2 blocks. Baker Mazar with 13, Denver Jones with 11, Miles Kelly with 15, Howard off the bench with 13, Pettiford with 15. The balance of the Auburn Tigers dominating with a 44-point victory here.
Yeah. Vandy TCU. Did you get a chance to catch any of that one? I know that was same time as Missouri and Kansas.
Yep, I had my eye on that one, and just as TCU was trying to have their eye on Jason Edwards, to no avail, as Jason Edwards goes for 30 in the Vanderbilt Commodores victory, 83-74 over TCU. And, again, when we talked about that game this morning, we said this is one of those games for Vanderbilt where you're probably going to look up at the end of the year and it may not be that notable in terms of like your resume, but it's a game you should win. And if you win this one, you'll take it, you move on to the next one. And so I thought this was kind of the same situation. Again, we talk about teams that maybe are not what they have been at times. TCU, I don't think, is quite there. But they've lost to good teams this year too. Their 4 losses, I think, have pretty much come against, really good opponents. But to have a guy that goes for 30 off the bench like Jason Edwards, I think the theme of the day in the SEC is getting the free throw line. 33 free throws in that game. Some of them came towards the end. But we also mentioned, Chris, we thought that TCU was probably the kind of team that shouldn't give Vanderbilt a lot of problems in terms of the way they played, whereas we thought on the other side Vanderbilt could. TCU hit some shots, but something we noted, TCU is one of the worst free throw shooting teams in the country. And little did we know that would also play a role here as, what they lost by 9. I think they missed, 12 free throws, 14, something like that.
Yeah. So. But TCU also 10 of 17 from 3, not a good 3-point shooting team. So for Vandy to go to Fort Worth, I know it wasn't on TCU's campus, but it was right there, close. Win that one by 9 under those circumstances, I think, is significant. Edwards is just so hard to guard. He hits some of these ridiculously tough degree of difficulty layups, even though he's not a big guy. And Tyler Tanner, we've talked about him, still doesn't have a turnover this year. I think that's over 200 minutes for a freshman. Got 5 more steals today and 3 assists. He was running some point with A.J. Hogarth just didn't look like himself today. I'm not sure what the deal was there, if there's an injury or something. But, putting up unbelievable numbers in a part-time role as a freshman. So I think that was big for Edwards. Edwards is a guy, like as many great players there are in this league, he may be a guy that ends up, leading the league in scoring, given what he means to them right now. So
no, he's got a shot. And look, we also said this morning, Vanderbilt wins this game. Don't look now, but they absolutely 100%. I won't say 100. A high percentage. They should be 12-1 entering league play. The Citadel, Austin Peay, New Orleans are their 3 games before they head to Baton Rouge to play LSU on January the 4th. And also, Vanderbilt's one of those teams with opportunity in those first several SEC games. At LSU, home against Mississippi State, at Missouri, which is looking tougher and tougher by the day, home against South Carolina before they get into an absolute gauntlet in the middle of SEC play. Home against Tennessee, at Alabama, home against Kentucky, at Oklahoma, at Florida, home against Texas, home against Auburn, at Tennessee, at Kentucky.
But, isn't that everybody's schedule?
No, we said that too. We said that's kind of the way it works, but we said it's also a matter of who you get twice. And that's going to be really important. They get Kentucky twice. They get Tennessee twice. You get Alabama and Auburn once, I think. But so yes, it's the way it works now. Like, to get Missouri twice, that ain't good anymore. So who knows, man? It's nuts around here. So, but anyways, shout out to Zach here, by the way, longtime follower of the league in Southeastern 16. $5 super chat. Past Auburn, but wants to bring up Miles Kelly shooting 46% from 3 this year. Yeah, Auburn hasn't had a guy like that in a while. And remember,
maybe 2019.
Well, and think about this too, Chris. When we're coming into the season, the one thing we were picking on Miles Kelly about was his percentages. Because if you went back to what he had at Georgia Tech, those percentages were not great. But we also said if you want to push back on those, it's also about what you're asked to do on a certain team. And because he was a guy that was asked to do so much for Georgia Tech, he wasn't going to get the type of shots that maybe on a team like this where you got everybody zoning in on Jani Broom or Denver Jones or, Baker Mazar or somebody else. It opens up a lot more good shots. And if you just can make those shots, you're going to be in a good spot. And so, yes, he has definitely been a big part for Auburn so far to this point. Shout out to Zach, though, for the $5 super chat. And again, if you're joining late, we've talked about Missouri. We've got about 30 minutes here. Again, plenty of time to leave a super chat. We'll hop off here in a couple minutes. Join the It Just Means More tier. Missouri fans, we asked Kentucky fans this morning. All right, we said, as we do watch-alongs for our members, we're going to do those as some of our special features as we go throughout the season. If there is a classic Missouri game you would like us to watch in a watch-along fashion, let us know. We'll put it on the list. And we had some interesting ones, Chris, voted on from Kentucky fans this morning. So we're going to have quite a list of... It was a lot of good choices, I thought. A lot of Malik Monk mentions, some Tayshaun Prince games. So Missouri fans, if you have any... You might just want to watch this one again. You want to just watch this one in a couple days. Let us know. We'll watch Kansas all over again, talk about it. You might be having that one on replay for a while, Chris. So
we ought to pull the what was the LSU Kentucky game? I don't remember if that's when Chris Jackson was there, and then LSU's up like 30 points. That would be an interesting one.
Yeah, that game was nuts.
That's been a minute, but
yeah, a lot of fun games we're considering for the watch-alongs for our members. Gonna be nuts. So, all right, let's see what else we got here. Shout out to Mother Carol. I mean, Mother Carol's been in all the streams today. Mother Carol, usually we're up to like one of these a day. We've done 3 today. I have also done 3 today. We've let Max and Chris.
I'm 2 for 3.
Their duties. Max has done 1. Chris has done 2. But who knows? I may go live here in a couple more hours just for the fun.
I've done a baseball, basketball, and football video within the last 36 hours.
You have?
Or 48. Yeah. Now the baseball one's not live yet, so.
Yeah, you have. So, and all SEC Final Four. I will root for that. I like to be unbiased here, but fan of business, yes, I will root for an all SEC Final Four. So, Big Baller Brett, we're not going live after Alabama gets a big commitment. Okay, I'm sorry, we're not to that level yet. Once we get the Alabama chapter of Southeastern 16, whenever we're the big time, then maybe at that point. But right now, we're not quite there yet. So, anyways,
Max Barr just had a heart attack reading that. I bet.
Oh boy, yeah, Max. We don't want to do this. So, all right. Let's see. One more thing. Oh, remember, we've also LSU's playing Florida Gulf Coast right now. They're up 19 in the second half. A&M and Texas Tech. That's a good game if you want to watch that one the rest of the way. About to go to halftime. Close game. Mississippi State, as people said earlier, a 38.5-point favorite against Prairie View A&M. Should be number 1 on your radar to watch this game. Mississippi State fans are excited. They're in the top 10 in all these metrics right now. And then 4 p.m. Central Time, Texas hosting UConn. Texas, Chris, did you know, is a slight favorite in that game. So could be another big one.
Because boy, that has gone in some different directions lately.
We did a bet this morning, the over/under on Dan Hurley ejection or technical fouls. It was an interesting bet we had earlier. So
yeah,
we'll see what happens. Things get a little rowdy in Austin. It gets weird in Austin sometimes. So
it does get weird in Austin, I hear.
So you never know. Perhaps Dan Hurley gets ejected today. We'll find out. All right. We're going to hop off here shortly. There was something else that I had to, it felt important, but maybe it wasn't. I completely forgot. So, oh well. Missouri wins. That's what's important to a lot of people in the chat right now, 800 plus of you. Elliot wants to watch Missouri, Kansas 2006. That's a great choice.
Does that count? That was pre-Missouri and the SEC.
It doesn't matter.
I guess we could do it.
We could do that. We weren't covering.
Yeah, that's when that was about the time Missouri was really fun for many years, if my memory is right on that.
Dennis Gates is saying, you want fun? I got you today. Number 1 team in the country. Down. All right. By the way, shout out to Tom, also a member of the It Just Means More tier at Southeastern 16. BBN, Big Blue Nation, checked in a big way this morning after their win over the Zags. Another team we've got to dissect and figure out where we're going to rank them in the rankings there tomorrow. We're doing live SEC Basketball Power Rankings, probably 8:30 a.m. Central, perhaps 9 a.m. Central tomorrow, folks. Live here on the channel. We're doing our Power Rankings live. Join in. Have fun. If you're working at the job and you're like, hey, I got something important to do. You tell them you're going to watch Southeastern 16's SEC basketball power rankings. They'll understand. Oh, that's it, Mother Carol. I said I felt like I had something important to do. It's the ad read. That was what I was thinking of. We got there, but that's the important thing that was on my mind, was an ad read. So, not really a great segue here, but let me tell you. Let's say that I'm going to use the same setup I used this morning. Let's say you just watched, Chris, the Missouri Tigers beat the #1 Kansas Jayhawks on their home floor. Let's say you just watched that, all right? And your thought was, you know what? I enjoy where I'm living right now, but man, that Columbia, Missouri looks like a scene. And you say to yourself, you know what? I'd like to move to Columbia, to Missouri. If you are someone who lives in Nashville or the surrounding area, which for me, the surrounding area, I've got to assume that means anywhere else on the planet because you're surrounding the other areas. All right? There is a place that can help you move to Columbia, to Missouri to join in with the #1 world-beating Missouri Tigers. You know what that place is called, Chris?
That's called Sanders.
No, it's called Sanders Logistics. Sanders Logistics. This is why I do the ad read and not you. Sanders Logistics is exactly the place you're looking for, folks. Your friends and mine. Sanders Logistics, formerly known as Ted R. Sanders Moving, a leader among moving companies in Nashville, Tennessee, and the surrounding area. I told you. Their team of professional movers focused on delivering efficient, hassle-free moving at an affordable price. That's the Missouri Tigers basketball way right there. Efficiency, hassle-free. Whether you're moving across town or across the country, you can move to Columbia, Missouri. They just said it right there in this read. Sanders Logistics has you covered. Visit them at tedrasanders.com, tedrasandersmoving.com. It's one of those two. You can try out either one, and I guarantee you're going to find it. Just Google it. tedrasanders.moving.com is what it is. So there you have it. Our friends at Sanders Logistics, they'll get you moving all the way to Columbia, Missouri. Maybe you want to move to Lexington after the big win over Gonzaga. Maybe you want to move to Portugal to watch SEC basketball.
What about Lawrence? Can they move you to Lawrence, Kansas?
Well, you probably don't want to do that. I don't think anyone here, we should be suggesting they move to Lawrence, Kansas. I do not think that will go over well. But if you want to, if that's just what you want to do, then perhaps you can also do that as well. So,
have you been to Kansas this time of the year?
No.
I have, and it's not fun.
Well, I've been to Columbia, Missouri, and it is fun. So, there you have it. All right, we're done here. Had to make sure we talked about our friends at Sanders Logistics. If you waited till the end, you got your money's worth. You'll get your money's worth as well at Sanders Logistics.
All right. God bless everybody. Thank you for watching. Congratulations to Missouri on a huge win over Kansas. We'll be here with power rankings tomorrow.
Live.
Football content of some sort, probably predictions for playoffs. I don't know. You guys, you and Max keep up with it. You just tell me where to be and when. That's
Our
how it
rankings
goes around
live
here.
tomorrow morning, Southeastern 16,
All right.
8:30 a.m. or 9 a.m. One of the two, folks. We don't know which one yet. Probably 8:30. We'll see.
Hit the subscribe button. Enable your notifications. That way you know when we are going live. Again, thank you to everybody for joining us. Thank you to those of you who left us super chats. God bless you. Have a great weekend. You've been watching Southeastern 16 presented by Bet Online.